Hello and guten Tag, mein Freunde! I'm Peter and here I'm telling you stories about the most interesting European cars of the 80s and 90s. Today we're talking about the most technologically advanced BMW of its time and one of the most unusual and brightest BMW cars ever made, the BMW E850, also known as E31. But before we start, don't forget to subscribe to my channel to never miss a new video. And if you are already subscribed, thank you so much. Now, let's get back to the car. The E31 was produced from February of 1990 to May of 1999 in Dingolfing, Bavaria, Germany. But the first public presentation of the car was at the Frankfurt Motor Show in September of 1989, so we can say that this car has seen a little of the 80s. And with this point of view, it probably was the most technically advanced car of the 80s. In total, just over 30,000 of these luxurious GT coupes were produced. Is it a lot or not? Well, many sources tell that BMW expected much higher sales, and that the E31 was a kind of a commercial failure. But I personally think that 30,000 units for a very expensive two-door car with a V12 engine, one of the most expensive cars in the world at that time, is not that bad a result. Not bad at all. The development of the E31 started in 1981 with the idea to build a very fast and comfortable car on the platform of the 7 Series, a car that would compete with the best GT cars in the world. The car was in general ready in 1986, but the launch was postponed for additional testing and to give a little more lifetime to the very popular 6 Series E24. The design was developed by Klaus Kapitsa, and he had a very challenging task to reach a drag coefficient below 0.3. For this, on the shortened platform of the BMW E32, he created a car with a resemblance to famous BMW sports cars of the 70s, a concept BMW E25 Turbo and the BMW E26 M1. The car, first time in the BMW's history, was fully developed with computer CAD engineering, and the prototypes were extensively tested in the wind tunnel. All this brought a great result. The aerodynamic coefficient of the E31 was 0.29, much better than 0.39 of the predecessor, the 6 Series, and even better than most of the sports cars of that time, including Ferrari Testarossa, Lamborghini Countach, Lamborghini Diablo, and Ferrari 40, which I have another video about. The design of the car was very aggressive for BMW, which wasn't known for very eye-catching cars at that time. The 5 Series E34 and the 7 Series E32 were great cars, but their look was relatively calm. And the E31, with its predatory front part, low roof line, pop-up headlights, and huge openings of the frameless side windows without B-pillars, looked like a real enfant-terrible in the respectable German family of BMW cars. But people liked it. A lot. When the car was first shown to the public, BMW instantly got so many orders that new customers had to wait for 3 years in the line to get a car. The E31 immediately became a car design icon, and the posters with its pictures ended up in the rooms of millions of boys around the world. It was unusual, it was beautiful, it was breathtaking, and it was unforgettable. Inside, the car also was very remarkable. It wasn't a sports car, it was a luxury Grand Tourer, so BMW did a lot to satisfy rich customers. The car was spacious for a driver and a front passenger. The seats were comfortable even for long road trips. It was very quiet inside. Well, as much as quiet a car with a V12 can be. And it had a decent trunk for luggage. The only problem was the almost non-existent space for the rear passengers. But this wasn't a family car, of course, and BMW showed this in many ways. Even controls and air vents in the front console were turned to the driver. The driver was the king of this beautiful fairy tale realm. The car was fully stuffed with electronics and modern systems. Of course, climate control, of course, trip computer, a very advanced one. Let me remind you that this was 1989. An optional traction control, an electronic drive-by-wire throttle. It was one of the first cars in the world that had it. Electric seats, electric windows, even electrically adjustable steering column. Now it is a standard option for luxury cars, but 30 years ago it was something from outer space. It's interesting that the interior of the 850 looks rather modern even by today's standards. You could drop a couple of screens on the dashboard and central console and leave everything else as it was, and the interior still would look great on a modern car. And the car was safe. ABS, driver's airbag and optional passenger's airbag, zones of controlled deformation, settings of the steering and suspension, all those things in combination worked hard to ensure a safe way back home even for a fast and aggressive driver. Well, this car was made for that type of drivers, let's admit this. During 9 years of production, the exterior of the car didn't change much, but the E31 had several engines during its lifetime. The first and the most popular one, installed in 2/3 of all cars produced, was a naturally aspirated V12 5-liter engine M70 from the BMW E32 750i. Here, this engine produced 300 horsepower and the car had a top speed of 250 km or 155 miles per hour with 0 to 60 miles per hour in 7.8 seconds. The cars with this engine had a model name 850i or, in 1993 and 1994, 850ci. At the beginning of 1994, BMW introduced a new 5.4-liter V12 engine M73, shared with the new 7 Series E38 and later with the Rolls-Royce Silver Seraph. The E31 cars with this engine also had the index 850ci, which can be a little confusing. This engine produced 326 horses, a top speed electronically limited at 250 km or 155 miles per hour, and 0 to 60 in 6.3 seconds. Starting from the middle of 1993, BMW produced a cheaper version of the E31, which still was more expensive than the most other cars on the road. This car got a model name 840i and a 4-liter V8 engine M60, which it shared with BMW 540i, 740i, and the Tommaso Guara. With this engine, the car had 286 horsepower, the same top speed, but 0 to 60 in 7 seconds. I wonder how many drivers really could see the difference between 6.8 seconds in 850i and 7 seconds in 840i. What do you think? In 1995, the 8-cylinder engine was enlarged to 4.4 liters with the index M62 and the car received the name 840ci. The power output and the top speed stayed the same, but the torque increased, and the car now could make 0 to 60 in 6.9 seconds instead of 7. BMW in 1992 considered production of an even more affordable version of the E31 under the name 830i. That car could get a 3-liter V8 engine M60 from BMW 530i and could have 218 horsepower, a top speed of 232 km or 145 miles per hour, and 0 to 60 in 8.3 seconds. BMW made 18 prototypes of that model, but decided against putting this version into mass production. Instead, they made a top-tier performance version of the E31 under the name 850 CSI, with a 5.6-liter V12 engine S70, specially prepared by the M Motorsport division of BMW. That car had 380 horses and could reach 0 to 60 in 6 seconds. The top speed was still limited at 250 km, but there are rumors that after removing the limiter, that car could reach 300 km or 188 miles per hour. The 850 CSI is the most desirable version of the E31 for many car enthusiasts. It has some kind of mystery around it. In addition to the engine prepared by the M division, it has many interior design elements with the specific M colors, which usually you could see in M versions of BMW cars. So you could expect this car to bear an M8 badge. But this never happened, and the car always was 850 CSI for any reason. That mystery was kinda solved in 2010, when BMW finally revealed that they were developing an even more powerful version of the E31 under the name M8. Only one prototype was produced, and you can see it in the Museum of BMW in Munich. That's a great museum, by the way, highly recommended to visit, as well as Munich in general. So the hypothetical M8 could have a 6-liter V12 engine based on the same S70 engine that was used in the CSI. But in the M8 it would produce 600 horny ponies with a top speed of 317 km or 198 miles per hour. But eventually BMW saw that the sales of the E31 were getting slower and decided that there was no real market for such a powerful and inevitably extremely expensive car. So they closed the M8 project and actually denied even its existence until 2010. A useless but interesting fact: the engine of the McLaren F1 was built around the same S70 engine block that was used in the BMW 850 CSI. The engines themselves, except for the cylinder block, were very different, and the McLaren engine was essentially built from scratch with many innovations in design, so there wasn't a large connection between those two cars. But let's just leave this fact here, for history. The 8-cylinder engines could be combined with a 6-speed manual or 5-speed automatic transmission. The 12-cylinder engines had either a 6-speed manual or at first a 4-speed automatic transmission, which was replaced by a 5-speed automatic gearbox in 1994. The performance version at 50 CSI was available with a 6-speed manual transmission only. Well, all that technical mumbo-jumbo is enlightening, but how did the E31 really handle on the road? Well, it was perfect, of course. It was perfect. It's a BMW of the 90s. Of course it handled great. It had great steering and a very responsible suspension with a multi-link rear axle. Even an active hydraulic rear wheel steering system, slightly turning the rear wheels together with the front wheels, was available as an option for 850i and CI and was standard for CSI. The weight of the heavy engine in front was compensated by the weight of the long body in the rear and a long wheelbase of the car, so the car didn't have a tendency to understeer or oversteer. It's a little controversial statement because the car in the whole came to be rather heavy, about 1900 kilos or over 4000 pounds. Maybe it was heavier than the drivers would want. As a result, the dynamics of acceleration was good, but not great. A direct competitor, the Mercedes-Benz 500 SL, was faster and made 0 to 60 in 6.5 seconds versus 6.8 for the BMW E31. This is a small difference, but it did matter for those who could spend over $100,000 for a car at the beginning of the 90s. At the same time, the BMW could give you a more thrilling driving experience. After 3500 RPM, the engine turned into a real beast and the car was very enjoyable to drive. The manual gearbox was very convenient with its long gears. You could drive from the 5th gear alone at any speed between 15 and 155 miles per hour. And this rear-wheel drive car was a perfect car for controlled drifting experience. A lot of power transferred to the rear axle in combination with a relatively long body and good weight balance allowed drivers to get into a drift and out of it exactly when and how they wanted it. So it was a really funny and friendly car, if you could afford it. But the price was not that friendly. The starting price before options was about $160,000 in today's money. Well, it wasn't the most expensive car in the world, of course, but the number of customers who could really afford such a pricey funny toy was limited by definition. BMW spent over $1 billion on the development of the E31. It was their most expensive development ever. There are many debates about how profitable or rather unprofitable this project was for BMW. A common idea is that the sales of this car were almost a financial catastrophe for the manufacturer. Well, of course 30,000 units sold were fewer than 86,000 of the 6 Series E24 or 213,000 of the Mercedes-Benz SL. But still 30,000 sales for a car of this type, a large two-door luxury GT coupe, were not bad at all. For comparison, the production number of Ferrari Testarossa was just below 10,000, and Lamborghini Diablo was produced in a quantity of 2,900. Anyway, no matter if it was a success or failure for BMW, the E31 became a significant and remarkable part of automotive history and a dream car of many boys in the 90s. Boys like me and probably like you. And by the way, if you want your childhood dream to come true, you still can become an owner of one of those cars for rather reasonable money. The E31 was imported to the US from 1990 to 1997, and there are still many of them around. And if you want more options, you can import one from Europe. Most of those cars are older than 25 years, so you can legally import them to the United States. In the United States, the current asking price for the 850 in good condition is from $16,000 to $70,000, with CSI model around $120,000. In the UK, the asking price for the 840s and 850s is from 12 to 30,000 British pounds. In continental Europe, the current asking price for the 850s and 840s is from 15 to 50,000 euros, depending on the mileage and condition, with exceptionally good cars up to 70,000 euros. The CSIs are listed from 55 to 150,000 euros. Well, thank you very much for watching. If you owned or drove a BMW E31, please tell me about your personal experience. Thank you so much for your comments and for sharing your thoughts. And if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. New interesting stories are coming soon. Danke schön, mein Freunde, and see you next time.